Welcome back. This is Cold War in 6 minutes. This is the series where I cover an event of the Cold War in 6 minutes or less. If I am successful, I get candy. Let's get started. So today we're covering the causes and impacts of the collapse of the USSR, the Soviet Union. But first, review. So from the perspective of the North Vietnamese, the war in Vietnam in the 1960s was a battle between what? Here are your options: fascism and liberalism. I don't know. Let's move on. Nationalism and imperialism. That looks interesting. Let's look at the other choices. Republicanism and totalitarianism. The Soviets could be seen as totalitarian, but let's look at the last one. Theocracy and monarchy. Definitely don't see religion featuring in here, so the correct answer would be nationalism and imperialism. The North Vietnamese saw the United States as essentially an imperial power, and France before them as imperial powers, trying to take them over. And the Viet Cong and Ho Chi Minh's people from North Vietnam saw them as kind of nationalists, pro-Vietnamese, wanting to push out the foreign invaders. Conflict led to a whole bunch of egg on the faces of the United States. Look at C. Pearson Realize for more information on that. So, what caused the Soviet Union to fall? Let's get started. Gorbachev. Mikhail Gorbachev became the chairman of the Soviet Union in 1985, and he just ruined everything. He established two main reforms that kind of led to the downfall of the Soviet Union. These were known as Glasnost and Perestroika. Glasnost is essentially more free speech, more free press, allowing individuals to criticize their government without being sent to a gulag. Looking at you, Stalin. Perestroika was basically an easing of government control of the economy and allowing some private business to operate in the Soviet Union. It looks like elements of kind of capitalism, though, which you can see it kind of leads to the downfall of the Soviet Union. If they're becoming more like democratic capitalist countries, what's going to be the need for a Soviet Union and communism after a while? Also, something that shouldn't be overlooked is the Chernobyl nuclear reactor disaster that took place in 1986. And this was a horrific nuclear reactor malfunction that took place in the city of Chernobyl. And kind of the mishandling of the disaster and the cover up wound up bankrupting the USSR. It exposed the flaws and the lack of safety in the Soviet Union, and they tried to cover things up and make the problem look not as severe as it was in an attempt to save the party and save them from just showing everyone how inept the current government was. And this, I believe, had a big hand in also the collapse of the Soviet Union. It reflects kind of the failure of the system of communism, that they can't keep their own people safe. If you're protecting your party at the expense of the safety of your own people, how long are you going to be in power? So, as glasnost and perestroika become more common in the Soviet Union, more people living within that region are going to pressure the government for more change. They want more civil liberties. They want more freedom. They want more economic freedom. And in 1991, Soviet republics, starting with Estonia and Latvia, declare their independence. And the Soviet Union did not have the economic strength to force these smaller countries to remain part of the Union anymore. And this leads to the collapse of the Soviet Union. More satellite states in Eastern Europe and in South Asia are going to declare their independence too. And the Soviet Union's not going to be able to do much to counteract that, and they're just going to collapse. So the Cold War ends. Around 1991. 1989, though, East Germany opens the Berlin Wall, and this sets the stage for the reunification of Germany. You can see those pictures there. This was a huge event in the 1980s and the early 1990s. In early 1990s, the U.S. President George H. Walker Bush, Bush 41, Poppy Bush, and the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, officially declared an end to the Cold War. They said, that's it, it's over. Who won? Well, the United States, because the United States was the only country left standing. After the Soviet Union collapses, basically all of those little satellite states become independent, have to manage their own borders, their own society, their own economy, their own government, which leads to uh, some conflict in some cases. So many former satellites did make successful transitions away from communism. Poland, we're looking at you, Romania, Bulgaria. Germany became reunited, held free elections, and Germany was able to restore their economy, restore their democracy. And even to this day, they're a dominant presence in Europe and in the European Union as well. So Germany kind of bounced back from remaining separate for quite many years in during the Cold War. So I guess good on Germany for that. And that's what we look like kind of afterwards. So Russia is its own Russian Federation, and you see all of those little former states of the Soviet Union or former satellites of the Soviet Union in the little different colors became their own independent nation. There's still conflict there even to this day in some of those areas. Czechoslovakia is no more, has become two different states. Ukraine has seen some action, particularly in the Crimea region. However, though, we can say that this marked the end of the Cold War. However, there's still a lot of work to be done. So, causes and impacts of the collapse of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev and his reforms, Glasnost and Perestroika, are going to have a big hand in kind of bringing out the end of the Soviet Union by opening up the government, the society, and the economy. And it will lead people living within the Soviet Union to want more. Also, the fact that the Soviet Union was just economically very weak led to the collapse. They could no longer stand up and compete against the juggernaut of the United States. And this collapse is going to lead to the reunification of Germany, finally, since 1945. Germany was finally whole once again, and also to formation of many new Eastern European nations. So I'm at about 7 minutes, 16 seconds. No candy for me today. However, enjoy the political cartoon. Have a nice day. I will see you on the other side.